Welcome. I'd like to call this Finance Committee meeting to order. The first item we have on the agenda is assignment for request for council action. We have several for finance, 19035 budget amendments, 1938 fitness room addition project approval, 1939 expenditure of 15,000 MNJ Technologies MCRC, 1940 update for electronic device policy and adopt a social media policy, 1941 expenditure for software solutions finance department, 1942 trade in 3 police vehicles, 1943 purchase 5 police cruisers for Lebanon Ford, 1944 then and now for Lexipol, 1945 then and now Ohio State Highway Patrol, 1946 then and now Verizon, 1947 then and now Ohio Edison. Let's see. The next item, I guess we can go through these quickly, is the budget amendments, which is 2019, the proposed fitness room addition funding. And I guess before we vote on that, we'll go to the fitness room addition project approval. Mike has a slideshow.
All right.
Some kind of show.
Sure. So most of you have seen this before, and it's pretty much the same slideshow, but some, I don't think Bob has actually seen it. So we're going to go through. This first picture here is just an example of the area that it's going to go in. This is out in front of the rec center fitness room. The 3 bay windows on the farthest from us are the 3 bay windows where we're talking about extending out from. That wall you see there, right there is actually the pool wall. So that'll be one of the existing walls, and then the glass windows will actually be existing too. We're not taking out the windows. We're just going to kind of build a room outside of it. So give you an idea of an overhead view of the area. That's what it's going to look like. The small little white in the top corner is actually a service area for the equipment. Right now, Kirk Gehring, when he takes apart a machine, he has to disassemble a treadmill completely, put it into the elevator, and take it upstairs and wheel it another 100+ feet just to get into a room where he can work on it. This is going to be an area he'll be able to roll machines right off the floor into it to repair it. So that's the service area. On top of that roof will be the HVAC system, which Bob will talk about a little bit when he gets up there. Just a larger, give you an idea. So originally, the design was about 2/3 of what it is now. So, and that was back in 2015. We originally started talking about it, Kurt and I. 2016, we brought on the architects, Tony Cerny and Bob Arnold at the time, and just talked about costs and what they can do and project-wise, to build. So then after another year of carry-forward building and realized where we were carry-forward-wise, we decided we could go another third bigger. So we went to the 4,300 square feet plus the 500 square feet for the service area. So this is over just that's what the rec center looks like now. That additional yellow, when you see the fitness room addition onto the fitness room. The fitness room was made to extend, but when they originally built the building, it was to do like 10 or 15 feet out all the way across. This is more feasible and get a lot more space, plus having its own HVAC. The building is at about 95% capacity of HVAC, so we knew we had to add units to heat and cool this new area. This is the overall drawing now. Like I said, it was 2/3 of that, so this line here over was what we originally started with, and then we were able to add the extend 28 feet or whatever it is out, and cost-wise, it wasn't that much more, so you get more for our buck. So, and then you see the service area here. It's going to have a slop sink, a bench, of course. He can put all his tools in there. And then just outside that wall, just be the only water for this room will be a water fountain in there. The rest of it's, just to give you an idea, functional training equipment that's going in there. We're going to move the balcony free weight, all that free weight stuff from the balcony into this room also, and add a bunch of TRX equipment, functional training, kettlebells, all the stuff we don't have available now. Stretch bands, certain areas of stretch bands, and TRX equipment is what's mounted on the wall. And it puts in, using your own body weight, straps, kind of stuff like that to work off of. So this is what it's going to look like. Roof-wise, this will be the roof that will slope towards the gully over here. And this is the existing roof. And we're talking about whether or not this area here, we're looking at that. The gutter will stay in place, we hope, but then whether or not they have this flat, we're going to talk more about it. So that's that. Let's see, that's just another side view of what it'll look like. So it'll really just look like standing in front of the rec center, you take a turn the windows, and that's exactly what it'll look like with the door outside there. And then on the inside of the room, as you walk through the fitness room and walk up through the center of the aisle, there will be a double door that will go into this room. So it's 2 separate rooms. You know, we get a lot of grunting, groaning, people dropping weights, all the other stuff on the balcony. It's pretty loud for the people underneath. So the idea of even moving all that equipment out into this outside room makes a lot of sense. So that's what it'll kind of give you a general idea of what it'll look like. It'll be an L, and Ellie, one of our fitness room attendants, one of our, I'd say our best fitness room, best employee. She does all the gardening out front right now with the, out front. She planted a bunch of stuff last year. She already claimed this area right in front of the window here for her plants and everything else she wants to do, so. So that's that, and then this is overall. So this is new. Bob put this together a couple weeks ago for the planning commission, so. That's it for my side of it. We'll let Bob step in. We had a 20-minute time limit, so I did as fast as I could. Any questions for me on this? The funding that we're putting in place is $800,000. The estimate we had, which is going to be updated, but was about $626,000. Bob is going to put together a contract for, so we can contract with Bob for, it's about $40,000 for the construction. If we choose to have him as the construction manager also with the project, otherwise it's $24,800 or something like that for his architectural services and everything else. We talked with Pat and Dan. We met last week to talk about whether or not Bob could be the construction manager for the job. He has been on all the other projects, field house, balcony, track, you know, a lot of projects that he's been involved in already for the rec center and the schools at that time. Okay. All city funded, out of carry forward that we had in place purposely for, you know, want to keep about $1 million, we think, for operations, future operations after the debt service drops off. We want to still make sure there's money in place in case there's bad years and good years. Bad years, we use carry forward to help with operations. So we have just over $2 million now. We want to use, you know, $800,000 for the patrons and do something good.
Yeah, a couple things I wanted to mention to you guys. When you see the building added on to that part of the building, I'm sorry, if you don't know me, I'm Bob Arnold, architect here with Arnold Architectural Strategies here in town, and I have worked on the Career Center or not the Career Center, this isn't the Career Center, the Rec Center for quite a while. So by placing this here, you have all of this metal roof that's up here sloping down, and all of that goes into an underground drainage system that kind of runs along the front of the building. We are going to, I'm going to go back here. Actually, back here, you have the water coming down the roof, and then we're going to collect it in here. But this has to be, we have to do some more design on this because of the length of it. We want to make sure that it doesn't collect snow and get heavy and all that kind of stuff. So we don't. The last thing I want is water problems in the building. I think that's the last thing you guys want too.
You didn't design the library, did you?
The library?
Yeah.
No. I tried to fix some doors over there, which is a real job. But anyway, so what we did was we actually separated the building out because we needed more height. So now this roof will all slope away. The water will go into that roof, and then there'll be a scupper plus drains that'll go out. And the whole idea here, let me go back to that other plan I wanted to show you on the site plan here. In this area of the site is a depression. It's a gully in there, and that's where a lot of the storm water goes down. And there's a structure down in there that collects the water and stuff like that. There are other pipes. There's a pipe that comes across here and drains into there, and I believe there's something over here, if I remember right, that goes into there. Fire line follows that.
Higher.
Huh?
It goes up around towards the road, up towards the road.
Yeah, up this.
That's a sidewalk.
Yeah, I thought it followed that.
No, it's up.
It's up here,
road.
fire? Okay, I thought it went around that, but anyway, the only thing that is in the footprint of what we have here is a underground sewer line that comes out of the building right there and then goes across, but it's underground, and I've already talked to my engineers about it, and they said, you know, sewer lines are run underground all the time, so they're under buildings, they're under floors, stuff like that. We just have to make sure that the trench and stuff that's around that is so that it's not impacted by the building being over top of it, so. But since it's a big room, there's not really anything in that room other than you're gonna have concrete and then the equipment, so. But, so anyway, the drainage will be in there, we will take the, let's back up here, again to the sections. Mike was mentioning the mechanical. When you look at the floor plan, you've got a 4,300 square foot room right here. What we are planning on doing, because in this room down here, the existing room, if you've been in there, you know that there's ducts that come down and they kind of end down along that wall. They were designed originally to extend out into an extension on that wall. But my understanding is that extension was planned to be 10 feet. This is 55 feet. So we can't, my engineer that worked with me when I did the balcony in there has told me, he says, I really don't think that you're going to have the capacity in that ductwork to extend it. And besides, you're working, if you did do that, you're working with two rooms now that are totally separated from one another, trying to be taken care of by one mechanical system. So I really pulled away from that. What we're going to do is put on the rooftop over on this mechanical room, or this workroom back here, we're going to put a rooftop on there and then run a duct up and then feed from this end of the building, and it'll go down and be collected and then taken back in. So it's going to be totally separate from what's in the rec center. Plumbing, like Mike said, the only plumbing, we kind of centralized it right together there. Is a mop sink in the back and then a water fountain and spittoon in there. There's water all along this wall and so forth, so we'll be able to pull water, and of course we can take the sewer out. Since that sewer line goes through here, we kind of got a natural place to put it. And then over in this corner, which actually got cut off on here, is the electrical. Now the electrical, we're going to have to run, we'll run it up this part of the ceiling, and we'll go up into the center down here of the rec center, up in the mechanical room there, because a lot of lights have been taken out of there. There's a lot of power up in there. We're going to be able to find a circuit up there and go from there. So the other thing would be fire sprinklers. Those will get designed and pulled in. We did the same thing with the balcony, had those designed in and that kind of stuff. So fire alarm, same thing. Should only be, well, maybe 2 poles in this building because there's 2 outside doors. But so, I should show you this just so you're aware of it. You see that this is like a panel fascia up here. Okay, over here it's actually the roof, but over here it's a fascia that'll go up. That is actually going to go up onto the roof a little bit here. So we have to work all that out. But anyway, is there anything else you wanted me to cover?
No, we're talking with Bob, trying to have a contract so you can look at it for the next finance meeting and see how that goes.
Yes.
Put it together.
Yeah, we're working on that now, so. Yes, sir.
Go back to the roof again, another one back. Why can't you connect the roof to the other roof? Because, I mean, I don't know, all the water's coming down and hitting that roof, or that ledge, your water problem, you're gonna have it. I don't understand, tell me engineering-wise, how you're not gonna have a water problem there.
The engineering is that we will, back up here.
Because you got all that roof.
See that column right there? That's where the outer edge of that is. So we'll collect, the water will come down into that roof and it'll run down. We'll slope it.
Do you really think that that's gonna happen?
Should, yeah.
Because we're guaranteed that we're not gonna have water problems. Because that just, to me, seems like, what's the difference of extending that roof over and connecting it to the other roof? Why is that an impossibility?
We needed a 14-foot.
Well,
right here, no, you
yeah,
got it.
I know what he's saying. But if you extend that straight across, you're going to hit right about here, or maybe up in here. So I think that mark right there is, because I think I looked at that about taking it up there. Part of the problem we were running into, because originally, quite frankly, is we tried to come from way up top here where this roof hits the building and come all the way down at a different slope all the way out here. But it was a lot of roof to add on there, it was a lot of weight, and then it was going to disrupt the building, the fitness center below. So anything we do on the roof here has the potential of disrupting what's going on below, because you're gonna have to take the metal off, tie it in so that you make sure that you're getting the flow above that and all that. So I
I know what you're saying,
The
but
goal was
looking
not
at that,
to-
it looks like you're, I mean, I don't wanna, it just looks like that's gonna be a problem. I mean, I guess because we're in northeast Ohio,
yeah.
and it's gonna freeze, it's not all gonna flow off, so you're gonna have a big ice, a lot of, I mean, I don't know how it doesn't flow off. I mean, at least, I don't know, I just get a little
Well, I've
nervous.
already told Mike I'm gonna take another look at this, and I'll give that some consideration, what you're saying there, John.
I just get a little nervous because of all the
No, I understand.
problems we have.
I understand.
After 5 years of getting pummeled with water because it's running off there, and it's just, in a heavy rain, it's not just gonna flow nicely, it's gonna start shooting off and hitting that wall, and then after time, it's just gonna get, you know, I don't know, it just seems, water is a bad thing. It's a bad
That was
thing.
Dan and Pat's concern too, is the ice buildup,
Yeah.
if it starts coming off the roof and onto that small area, how much weight can it hold? And there's a lot of questions on that.
Well, I'll take another look at that, and maybe, you know, we should be able to still keep the truss here, but we're just extending it, doing an extension up there, but we'd have to redo, well, that could actually be the, saying the EPDM roof or whatever is gonna go up there. So, because you won't see it. That'll all be behind the fascia, so. okay.
Bob, we're taking real careful note of your representations about this issue, so.
I know.
So remember when I first got on council?
It's an issue, I know.
We were told by somebody at the cemetery that with a 100-year copper roof, we'd have never any problems.
Right.
Mausoleum.
How'd that go?
10 years later, you have a problem, right?
Yes.
It wasn't even 10 years.
Yeah, well, believe me, I don't want to have any problems there, and we've been working to keep that clear. This is where it ended up as we've gone through all the stuff we've been going through for the last couple of years. so.
We've been talking about, like, if we tore that steel roof is a 50-year warranty on that steel roof, and to affect what's already there, I'm sure the schools didn't want to either have anything impact on the existing steel roof, and maybe dropping the room down a couple feet and having a ramp to go in, but then the ramp had to be so long, and there was a lot of things that were.
Like I said,
we've been through all
why you
kinds
have
of
to tear the
things.
roof off to connect the other roof to it? I mean, why wouldn't you just be able to leave it alone? going-
Well, if we can leave it alone, I will, but generally, you don't like to leave, I mean, every roofer I talk to, they say, you gotta get rid of the stuff below it.
It's metal though.
Yeah, I understand. There should be no reason anybody will have to go up in here, but then one of these days, Dan's gonna have to climb up in there, aren't you? So, no, I realize that's why we bring it up, because I know it's an issue.
Maybe you can get one of the engineers then to guarantee that there'll be no water problem.
That's
good
what
luck.
we want to
50
guarantee in a
years.
bond.
Yeah, good luck.
So that's our 20 minutes, Bob.
Is it up? Is it up already? All right.
Any other questions?
Anything else? Any other questions?
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
I think Nino's in his office. Nino, is that new chair in your office? What is it? See back there? Oh, there it is. It looks like I shrank. But that's okay.
Maybe they're trying to size this.
Thanks for the information on that. So I guess that moves us right into the 1935-25, the budget amendment regarding the use of the funds related to the services and building and equipment for it of $800,000. Anybody have any questions on that? Where it's coming from?
Nothing very much explained that.
Okay.
Mr. Coyne, I'm going to abstain on both of these since it benefits my employer.
Sure.
Move to approve.
Second. Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. In 1938,
Abstentions.
oh, any abstentions?
Aye.
1938 fitness room addition project approval. Any other questions regarding that? Everybody understand it?
Move to approve. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstention?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay. So we go to 1939 expenditure over 15,000 for MNJ Tech for the rec center. Mike?
Thank you. Just want to thank Darren and IT working on this, getting this quote for us. This is for our new computers. Was it 4 years ago, I think, just over 4 years ago, we upgraded those. We'll donate the old to the schools again, but we do need to upgrade for sure, and the reasons were Windows 10, and go through the list of reasons we're going to have to upgrade, so working on that. That's for the 18 new.
Questions?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. 1940, updating electronic device policy and adopt a social media policy. Sarda? Who's talking about this?
I'll start.
Go, Mayor?
So, we realized under the Ohio Public Records Policy that text messaging and social media, if we're using it to either answer questions or get input from the public, we're required to archive that. So we had to find a company that was willing to do that. We already on our own archive all of our emails in and out for 5 years. But the text messaging, because they're through the phone system and not through our own system, we had to find a outside vendor that was willing to do that for us. And not only do they do the text messaging, but they also do other social media, because we have 3 separate Facebook accounts and we have 1 LinkedIn account that we share information through. So the archiving agreement that we bought includes up to 5 devices. Right now, we're only using 4, up to 5 systems. We're only using 4 of the 5 systems. But what this is before you for, that's an explanation of what we're doing, is to amend the policy that we have. We have a electronic device policy that has a section 4.1, and what we want to do is add a section 4.2 that talks about text messaging, and then at the bottom, 4.3 to that same policy with that little clause at the bottom with the arrow there that says all commentary and or posts made in response to social media will be stored and retained by the city's archiving vendor. And that way we're covering everything that we're doing.
So do we need to worry about, I mean, there's some examples of us other policies. Are you saying that's the only changes you want to make, or do you want us to look at these
No.
other policies and
No, we're telling you that's all we want to do, because that's all we're using and this takes care of our needs.
Do we have to look at those other?
Well, that was, the city, most cities have a social media policy if they use Facebook or Twitter or all those things. Whenever I go to my municipal clerk conferences, it's always a big topic. So I brought it up in 2011, that's why I talked to you about it, to
Right.
see if you.
I guess I don't know, I mean, if it's.
I mean, we don't have to, I'm just bringing it up.
But if it, I guess that's a legal question.
That
Mr.
is a
Huber?
legal
Yeah, Mr. Huber and Darren and I all looked at this, and we want to keep it as simple and upfront as we can. This is what we're using, it covers everything we're doing, so why add in a bunch of stuff that's not applicable? And it fits in within the policy that we have existing already with a couple minor amendments.
Is that enough for you, Mr. Huber? Can you
I agree with the mayor.
use your legal ability to? All right. Questions? Nobody? Nothing? Nobody's on Facebook here? I guess not.
I'll make a motion to add in section 4.2 for text messaging.
And?
And then 4.3, Jim, is that bottom clause there about the social media.
And 4.3 for social media.
Thank you.
Second.
Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 1941 expenditure for software solutions for the finance department.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is our annual maintenance for our software vendor. It's up a little bit over last year. And we have some new things with the signups online and stuff that they work with. Since this is the software we have, this is the only vendor. We can't get it serviced by another vendor.
Do we talk about, about the SSI, or, I mean, there's a discussion on and off about a different vendor. What's happening with that? Anything, or
We've looked at other vendors. The time to make a change is when you're gonna upgrade. So, I mean, we're not looking to upgrade right now, so we wouldn't be looking to change right now. When we have made upgrades, we've done it a couple times in the time I've been here. There's a few things we look at. We get some offers sometimes from out-of-state companies, and I would strongly oppose being the only Ohio-based customer of like a California software company. You understand what I mean? Because we'd get into a situation where, first of all, we'd have trouble getting someone on site. But secondly, SSI is based in Ohio. They're in Lebanon, Ohio, down near Cincinnati. There are things that happen in Ohio where some law will go in, or workers' comp will do something or whatever, and we have to react to that. And they do it because all of their customers are in Ohio, so we're not the only one asking for a change. So that's one thing you want to look at right away. I mean, if you were with a company, I don't mean to pick on California, maybe Kansas, could be anywhere. If you're a company that you're their only customer in Ohio, you're going to be paying for code to comply with whatever law that change that you've got to comply with. Where being with a company that's extensively in Ohio, we don't have that issue because they just push out the updates for us that come out whenever something goes on with Ohio, tax tables, so on. Again, we would look at that at an upgrade. We would compare to other companies.
And when do
see
you
how they do.
anticipate another visit to the upgrade?
It's never a fun process, but yeah, I mean, you know, eventually the technology gets far enough behind you just have to. We keep an eye, we try to get a good deal on that. There's a few different ways to do that. One is to, as I call it, be the guinea pig and go first. We generally have not done that. The other one is that a lot of times if you're one of the last ones, they'll give you the new software for free because they're trying to get rid of the old. They don't want to support the old stuff anymore. We've gotten that a couple times. Usually free comes with the string that you've got to sign a contract for maintenance for a few years, but as a practical matter, we're going to have maintenance with whatever software we're with, so that's how we usually do it.
And how long? A year, 2 years, 3 years? We're looking at that again?
I would say 2 or 3 years.
Questions for Pete?
How does this interact with the other software that we're getting, like say in the clerk of courts or in the law department or police department, where applicable, of course?
We do interact to some extent. What we interact more directly with is like the utility billing. We have the meter read software has to upload into this software because this does the billing. And that we haven't had any problems with, but we always look at those things. When we buy meter read software, we make sure that they're with a company, you know, either they already have another SSI customer or they're willing to write the code to get it to work. Because, you know, whenever you change something, and we'd have to do the same thing, compatibility the other way, if when we came to upgrade time, we came by and say Sanderson came in cheaper, that's another software vendor, okay, we'd have to make sure that they were capable of reading our meter reads. Generally, that's not going to be a problem, again, because we'd be looking at a company that has other customers that are cities that are in Ohio. They probably have other customers using our meter read software. We don't interact so much with like the law. I mean, they're still storing cases, we're storing money, so we don't interact so much with them. The courts to a lesser extent, but I mean, we haven't had any issues.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 1742, trade-in of 3 police vehicles, which coincides with the next one, 1943, the purchase of 5 police cruisers. Chief?
Thank you, Mr. President. We're requesting to trade in these 3 vehicles for credit on the next item, the purchase of 5 cruisers. The reason we're doing 5 is that Ford kind of threw us a curveball last year. We put in an order, it was approved. We have an open PO for $58,004 for the 2 vehicles from last year. They canceled the order and said they were no longer producing the 2019s. They essentially forced us into waiting for the 2020s to come out. They did give us a $2,000 credit for each one, 2 of the 5 for this year. So we did get a credit based on the inconvenience that caused. It does throw our vehicle rotation off a little bit. We'll have to consider that in the assignments so that we can manage the mileage in that rotation so we can get back on an appropriate rotation. If you recall, last year we discussed that, and that was the goal.
Are the ones that were trading in sedans and the ones that are buying
These are all Explorers.
They're all Explorers?
Yes, sir. And I have the emergency clause on both because we are delayed because of the canceled order from last year.
Now, how many vehicles in the fleet again? I can't recall, 27? Total
The
vehicles?
front line, we have 13.
And then-
Overall,
'Cause I thought we had.
I think overall, we have around 21, I
21.
believe. But I don't have that exact figure.
I thought it was more of it.
No.
Probably, okay. Questions on that? So next year, next year, how many vehicles do you think? We're gonna rotate 3 then, or how? What's the
3 next
schedule?
year. Yes, sir.
Is trading in the best value? Would we get more if we would auction it?
No.
Okay.
Usually get a couple hundred.
Yeah, 17 is better than a couple.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Any other questions? So let's vote on the trade-in of the 3 police vehicles first.
Move to approve with emergency clause.
Second, including emergency clause.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And the 1943, the purchase of 5 police cruisers from Lebanon Ford.
Move to approve with emergency clause.
Second, including emergency clause.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, now we have 1944, then and now for Lexipol.
This was just it's a maintenance, but it's just a year-end issue is why we have the then and now.
Question?
Move to approve
Second,
the emergency.
including emergency clause.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 1945, and then and now for Ohio State Highway Patrol.
This is for these, it's the police department uses it for their information, and again, it's just a year-end issue is why we have the then and now.
Move to approve with emergency clause.
Second, including emergency clause.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 1946, and then and now for Verizon.
Same thing, it's the monthly cell phone bills, but this is because we have year-end, we didn't have the PO for it, so we have the then and now.
Move to approve with emergency clause.
Second, including emergency clause.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And finally, 1947, and then and now for Ohio Edison.
Same thing.
Move to approve with emergency clause.
Second, including emergency clause.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We have one other item. I don't think we have an executive session then, or do we?
No, we'll still have an executive session, but we'll do this first.
The other item we're going to add is to talk about, Mr. Hudson, the county commissioner, is here, and Judge Werner's here to talk a little bit about the court project. We all received an email from Scott Miller regarding a bond issue and an amount there, and I had a discussion with the mayor. I think, and correct, you guys can tell me if I'm wrong, I think we're still in the same area where we were before with Judge Chase, about 7 to 8 million total all-in number, unless that's changed. We have a couple new members on council. I don't know what your feeling is on that, about the cost of a court. We spent many years discussing it, if you recall, the members that were on council. And I think we were kind of around a total all-in building of around 27,500 square feet with a total cost between 7 and 8 million. City's contribution. And we kind of stuck with that. The last one that came in was I think the costs have changed, and it went up to about 9 million, 9.5, and we told Judge Chase no. We were not interested in that. And I think the building size he wanted, he wouldn't budge off of was about 29,000 square feet. And I think we agreed, no, we weren't interested in that either. So that's kind of where we stood. And now, with the new advent of cooperating, I mean, those numbers could change. I think they would be lower, because we would share common areas and utilities on an ongoing basis. The cost should be lower. But that's kind of where we were, and I don't know where we are now. So Mayor, I'll give it to you, and then you can have the judge and Mr. Hudson.
I think the judge may have brought one of these too, just to kind of show you some of the design changes. So we'll get a couple of these books up here to show you. So there you are. Just spread them. So this page here,
You guys are prepared. Wow.
here's another one.
Page I'm going to.
I don't know, I'm trying to figure out where you got it. So the one shows, I don't think these are numbered, right? So if you go to the one at the top, says, it's probably 4 pages in, program recapitulation and cost of a team. It shows a breakdown of the square foot based on the shared space, the municipal court space of 25.9 and the county court at 77,297, as well as some cost options for the demolition, site improvements, the building, and other costs.
The first question I think I spoke with the mayor about these numbers is that the Muni Court of 25.9, if you recall, our court that we're looking at 27,000 included all the common area. And I guess I just want to clarify, does this 25 include any common area? Or is this all building and use? Because I think, I don't know, Patrick, if you looked at how much the common area was in the building we were looking at?
I looked at the one we looked at, I haven't seen.
Right,
Common area, I guess we're just talking about public spaces.
Bathrooms, hallways?
Yeah, and this was for the 29,000 square foot, that's what we
Okay.
did a test fit study for. And it came to about almost 3,900 square foot on the first floor and 2,700 square foot on the second floor. Of public areas, lobbies, restrooms, elevators, stairs, and that.
So that's 6,600 square feet.
Right, for both floors.
So that's on the 29,000.
Right.
So that would be a building size on that of about 23,000 square foot building.
Correct.
We're looking at.
And that, that was for 2 courts, probation, prosecutor's office. That was it.
So we're looking maybe, because I don't think we ever agreed, and we revisited it on 29,000, so a couple thousand square feet less, and I don't know what that would be, so around the 21,000 square foot, give or take a little bit, building. So our size would be about 4,000 or 5,000 square foot less than what's shown here, which affects the cost, of course, because it affects the calculation of the percentage of the total, which is going towards the common area of 50,000. So I guess we can look at that to see what that puts us at from a cost perspective.
So for everybody's benefit, and Bill can correct me if I'm wrong, it's Bill's committee, but how I understand it, they looked at the things that were solely the 77,297 square feet versus the 25,917. The 25,917 was solely Muni Court. The 77,297 was solely common pleas, county courts. And then the 50,350 was the shared space, which is the hallways, the security area, the restrooms, maybe even, Bill, you can correct me, maybe even the shared attorney meeting rooms, client meeting rooms. So whatever the percentage was of the 77,000 plus the 25,000, they then took that same percentage with the overall open space, or shared space, and then calculated the same percentage for that. So in essence, ours would be 25.9 plus about 26% of the 5350, making our building obviously more than what we had first anticipated.
That's about 25%.
Yes, sir.
So if we change that to, let's see what it would be,
About 38,000 square feet, 39.
98,000. Well, that's make their numbers right.
You're gonna be somewhere in the
21.
area of 37 to 38,000 square feet, I think, if that's what you're trying to do.
Well, it's 21% times 50, we got 50,000 equals 10,000. So that still puts about 31,000 square feet. That's kind of bigger than we anticipated. And I guess the question is the cost. If it's $7 to $8 million, then maybe that's fine, the 31,000 square feet. But I don't think that is it.
No, but I was gonna say, whatever fits in $8 million.
Right. That's true. Okay, sorry. So you see, we got a cost. 8 million is our limit. If it's over that, then we gotta get a smaller court. That's kind of where we're at. Mayor?
We did ask them to cut it down, because originally it was 41,000 square feet. I think the actual court without the shared spaces was 41,000 square feet. And we asked them to trim some of that. So if you go back to 3 pages from that one, I'm sorry, 4 pages from that one, you'll see concept building plan, second floor. There's a piece next to the magistrate's office that says future that was trimmed out of the court in an effort to save some of the muni court space, and therefore that percentage. to get.
So I guess my question would be, is there a way we're gonna get to that $8 million number, or what? Because this design, I mean, we saw the thing from Scott Miller was $11,250,000. And is anybody okay with that? I just want to check, maybe I'm wrong. But I think we gotta cut around at least 3.5 million out of that. So.
Yeah, and I shared that with Scott today, and he asked if I meant 3 million out of the whole project or 3 million out of our side.
Our side.
And I told him it was my impression that it would be out of our side, but I was having this meeting tonight, and I would share that with him early tomorrow morning. So I'm just looking for, some guidance of.
Well, I guess there's two things that I have, and anybody can chime in when they want. I think, I'm still under the impression, been in discussions for over 10, 15 years, that we're about 27,000 square feet all in. If we build our own building, it'd be about a 27,000 square foot building for between 7 and 8 million. That's it. Now, if we could get to that combined, I thought it would be more cost effective because we'd be sharing space. So if we're sharing some hallway space and meeting space, I would imagine that the 27,000 square foot, as Mr. Patton indicated, would bring us down to about 20,000 square foot building, and then with the shared space.
Right.
And that would get us to a number, I think, that which should work, because if we're building a bigger project, the cost of construction should be lower, you would think, maybe I'm wrong, because it's a larger project. There should be cost efficiencies in that regard. And the second point is I've been talking to several people since it hit the paper, and I didn't really have anybody who was favorable to the tearing down the buildings. Even the courthouse building, I have people say, what are you doing? We don't want that. So I don't know what anybody else heard about that, if they heard anything, but that's just what I've heard, and I don't know how to handle that or process that. But the design as it looks here, I mean, there's some additional space for additional building in the future that'll be kind of park space, and the question I had is, well, we have a park already called the Square. And they'd rather see use of the land, full utilization of the land in buildings than otherwise. I mean, anybody else have anything else?
Well, I do.
Okay, what?
Yeah, I think I've shared some concerns with the mayor, and anyway, who did this drawing?
Expenditure.
Oh, okay, it's
Yes,
the
sir.
same as the last one?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I
Same
wasn't sure.
company, yes.
Okay, I saw Bob sitting here, I was gonna make sure. Because what I'm gonna say, leave the room.
You want me to leave?
No, you're welcome to stay. You're clean. Well, I have a lot of concerns, because I've talked to a lot of people about the project itself. And so I met with some architects. I met with architects locally, and I have a meeting end of this week with Chambers and Murphy. Because I after it got in the paper, I got a lot of feedback about the design and the placement of the buildings. And the largest feature, and I've actually come around to John's concern about what I call the new courthouse, and it really isn't that new, because now it was built in 1967, so it's actually, it meets the historic criteria too. It's over 50 years old. But that concern was kind of interesting, because I didn't think of it as significant. I think I said this at a number of meetings, because I know how that courthouse came about. And that was when the commissioners had a plan to tear the old courthouse down, the iconic one, and put that one bare. And they drafted those plans, they totally drafted those plans, and then put the plans up. They were done.
it was this is the courthouse. And it was, because they wanted to build a new courthouse, and it was also out of ignorance because they thought that the downtown was kind of colonial federal. And, you know, and Jefferson's idea of how do you secure a new country and make it seem like something important was to build these buildings with big pillars, and that's why a lot of our stuff looks like that in a lot of government buildings. So that courthouse was really a mistake, because then the old courthouse got saved, not because of the commissioners, but because folks didn't want it torn down. And so the new courthouse ended up where the new courthouse is. So when I looked at it, I thought, well, I don't really care much about that new courthouse because I know how it got there. But I've been here for quite a while now. If I had moved here, you know, if I had gone to school here as a child, I suppose, and grown up with that courthouse, that face of the courthouse would probably be dear to me, because that would be part of where I grew up. That's part of my community. And when you stand on the west side of the square and you look across to where all that is, that view, how that view will turn out, what that's going to look like when people are standing on the square, the gazebo and what's behind it, that's one of the most significant parts of the square. I mean, we are in a reality, we are the guardians of the past. That is what we have a responsibility to do, and that's the reason we have been so successful as a community. So I once it was public, I took that one drawing because I could not understand, and you can actually see it here. I asked some local architects exactly, because I couldn't identify really what kind of architecture is this. I mean, I know what this is, and I know what most of the other buildings on the square are, and I know the difference in architectural styles, but I said, what is this? And they told me, they said, this is actually no architectural style. This is, you know, this pediment is something from some architectural style, the round window. And I said, well, what would you do, how would you describe it? And two different firms told me the same, used the same word. And the response was, this view here is, they said it was oppressive. It looks heavy, and it looks oppressive. So I photographed what we have now with some folks last week, and took a close look at the old courthouse. Because actually the old courthouse roof is still under this courthouse. You know, the earliest courthouse roof inside the old courthouse. And I understand that part of that construction extends into the back. And the back of the courthouse that is supposed to be torn down, the back of the old courthouse, that was built somewhere around the either late 18 or very early 1900s, which makes it about 120 years old. And if you look at that, if you look at how that brickwork looks in the construction of that building, it is significant to the square area as well. The piece that's being added on here, the old courthouse, when you stand in front of it, it actually goes back to here. So by moving these things up, you lose the south side of the old courthouse. When you walk up there, this way we have the little historic marker, and then the grass goes back. So, among other things, this, whatever would go here, but you wouldn't want to have something that doesn't in any way, and blend isn't the right word, you wouldn't want to have something that's so bulky and so far in front, so close to the street, that it really starts to dwarf the old courthouse. That footprint needs to move back. And I totally agree with John. This inner space here, this park, I don't know what the value of that would be. The other concern that is the prosecutor's office. The prosecutor's office is the last remaining house on the face of the historic district. And it was built by It was built by the Gunkelmans, I think. Gussimers in 1872. And no one wants that house torn down either. Because if you look at the view of that prosecutor's office from any part of the square, library, street in front of it, across the street, that's a really significant building in the viewscape of our downtown. So for me, I mean, I think it all needs to be worked out. But I think when there's no involvement of anybody in the planning, which is exactly the same as the planning that went on for the courthouse that turned out not to be built, when the courthouse was going to be torn down, when there's nobody involved in the planning, you get to this point, or you get to some point, and this is what this is what you're going to have. You have a footprint of a bulky, massive building right out almost to the corner of the old courthouse that takes away from the appearance of the courthouse and in many ways really dwarfs it. And then you have this architecture that is apparently no architecture at all. And I think that we have this responsibility about protecting what we have. If in fact we ended up with something that looked like this in replace of what we did have, then to me, you'd have to show me a really serious cost savings in going forward with the project, because we do have these shared common spaces. That would have to be so awfully significant in order to build something like this on the face of the historic district.
Well,
That's why I think you need to have people involved in the early planning of the process. But I think the county has spent, you spent $100,000 so far? Is that right?
About 50.
100?
And if I may, what you have in front of you is not the drawing. Our project was solely geared around trying to figure out how much space is needed
Right.
and how much it's going to cost to construct it, not necessarily to come up with that drawing. And the next phase of this is where we would actually engage an architect to design the building. And Bill, that is where I think the more public involvement and greater involvement will take place.
But
This
you've already
was
spent
never-
$100,000, right?
50.
50,000.
50.
50.
I've heard 100,
Well, you can hear whatever you want.
Yeah.
It's 50.
He's on the commission, he should know. He should know.
So we're not to the stage of actually designing the building. All we wanted to do was to figure out how many square feet we needed and what it's going to, rough ballpark figure, what it's going to cost.
Yeah.
So we could figure out whether we could even afford to go to the next step.
Yeah.
Because the county spent something in excess of $250,000 10 years ago to come up with plans for the courthouse, and then decided they couldn't afford to do it. And I would suggest to you that the plans that they had back then were much, in my opinion, different and not as aesthetically pleasing as even these might be. So, again, I wouldn't, I would not spend a lot of time going over those drawings and critiquing the elevations, because it's probably not gonna look like that.
And that's an interesting point, though. I mean, but this is what you put out to the public. So when you put this out to the public,
Well, first off, we didn't put it out.
it came from the county.
Well, the press came to us and made a records request to get that information.
Right.
So
I mean, when we
it
met
was
in
not
an
like
executive
we-
session, where my understanding was, we were having that was a private discussion.
Mhm.
And then it turned out, read it in the newspaper.
Because of the public information request.
Right.
And when they spent the county dollars on it, they had no choice but to
Right.
release it.
So you make a good point. I mean, if this isn't the drawing that I guess you guys have spent money on, but your footprint your footprint brings the building out to the street, takes the back off the old courthouse, and eventually takes down the prosecutor's office. So those concerns, those are, I guess, would be considered live concerns,
I think that's her.
because that's where you have the footprint. And if that's the footprint, then I guess you could come up with a different architectural design, but that footprint, for me anyway, that footprint wouldn't work.
Yeah, I understand.
Any?
Mr. Hudson, Judge Warner, I appreciate you attending tonight. When John's discussion first started, that's where I'm at with this. I understand that this is just a concept. I mean, I agree with Bill that when you figure out the funding and you're going to actually hire an architect to actually design what's going on, I would hope that the county is willing to get the public's input on some of Bill's concerns. Right now, what I'm looking at, though, is the concept of spending $11 million versus $8 million. I am so grateful that the county is, and I don't know how Judge Warner feels, I'm pretty sure I do, Judge. I am so grateful that the county is willing to actually look at incorporating the Muni Court in this complex. I mean, from my heart of hearts, I am grateful. I'm with John. I hope that we can talk about that $8 million and still have the shared space and give the judge more space than he has now and meet his needs for the future, but within that $8 million area. The rest, I believe what you say, that these photos are not set in stone and probably are not anywhere close to what is going to be the final product, if the final product does come up. I agree with Bill to the point that I think that you will have some other, I mean, it's your property, I understand that. But I do hope, and I believe that with the current commissioners, that you will allow public input from organizations like the CDC and hear the concerns of the community, which will help dictate what is actually placed in this footprint. I agree that the Gunsmore building is important. Obviously, the old courthouse is very important. And I do understand your concerns of moving, if your footprint includes a building coming out to the sidewalk, that will obscure some of the aesthetics of the old courthouse. So that would be a concern, but I understand and I appreciate the county's involvement, even though it's $50,000 now to get these preliminary drawings. I know it's gonna cost you a lot more than that when you actually figure out where the funding's gonna come from, and that we'll be able to sit down. I hope in my heart of hearts that we are gonna be able to find common ground where we can incorporate, if possible, the city's Muni Court with your project.
And Bill, just to ask you a question, on the design or the space needs of the various courts and the clerk of courts for the county and us, were there discussions made to come up with those numbers or space as far as like the county clerk of courts? I just wanted to ask a question because I asked this before. Like the county clerk of courts, there's like, I think there was 7 or 8 windows and we have 6 windows for the clerk. Is there ever a discussion that you kind of have the 2 clerks in one space with one set of windows instead of having multiple windows? Is there anything in the law, I guess, that says you have to have separate spaces for each clerk, or can they be, you still have a city clerk and a county clerk, but they're in one space and there's one window, but you come to the window, but you still have 2 clerks, but you don't have to have all these extra windows and space? Because it seems kind of, I don't know why we need 9 or would be 15 windows to pay bills.
I wouldn't focus on the windows necessarily.
So, I'm just talking about the space.
In answer to your question, John, I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna guess that you have to have a clerk of courts for each court. Whether they could commingle in the same space,
Right.
I don't know.
Because I'm just wondering, because you got there's a lot of room there, and it's just like, well,
Yeah.
when I pay a bill, I don't really know, as long as I pay the bill, I don't care what window I'm at. So I just,
Yeah.
from a space perspective.
I mean, that might be something we could look at.
Because it's a lot of extra room we're talking about, and it seems like, I don't know if those issues were ever looked at when you come up with, when Scott gave us numbers of 77, I mean, was any of that looked at? Because it seems like your goal would be to save money as much as possible and try to utilize the space as best as possible and cut out things that you wouldn't need. Is that, in looking at that, because it's all our money. I I live in the city.
Yeah, John, I think the principal areas that are shared is like the main entrance.
Mhm.
You have one set of security.
Mhm.
Down in the lowest level of the courthouse, you have the sally ports,
Mhm.
and where you would bring defendants in those areas would all be shared.
Sure.
So there are some areas that are shared. I would tell you that the design, I'm talking about the interior floor plans that you see there, are compliant with the Ohio Supreme Court security guidelines, and also the National Center of States Courts, I think it's what it's called, guidelines for how a courtroom and how the attorney areas and the areas that are geared for the public relative to the judiciary and defendants is all set up. I mean, there is a method to all of that.
Right, no, right.
And, you know, because you have, at least the way this design was set up, you know, two more separated spaces, you have to have extra banks of elevators and so forth. So if we wanted to come up with a design that integrated them more together, I'm sure that if we give that instruction to the architect,
Well, I think
we could do
that
that.
cover Bill's concern too, in keeping the face of the square, you know, maybe different depths and stuff. I mean, we know what we need here. I mean, this could be, I would assume, modified, like maybe the back half could be brought up to the front so it's more along the whole square, and you still have a walkway on the whole back, and things are more integrated, and you still kind of keep the same, you know, areas. I mean, you just can hook them together. Instead of having a four-quad area, you'll have, you know, a four-quad area going linearly and a walkway all out the back, and that's still a common area. I mean, that could still be done, and you're just moving it around, but maybe your goal is to look at the facade of it, and it's just a facade, of course. How do you make that facade stay the same? Because the look, you want the quote-unquote look. And I think you're correct, maybe that's the next step. But I kind of agree with what Bill's saying. When you take half the square down, it kind of shocks people.
I love it that you kind of agree. This isn't my concern, you know, this is my concern, okay, this is my concern, just as I live here. Okay, but this is not like my concern.
Well, it's everybody's concern.
It's our concern.
Yes.
Because what we have works. And, you know, it's like I said in the beginning, I thought nothing of the pillared courthouse when I heard that was gonna go. I kind of thought, well, it's not about that. But I've heard feedback from more people who, I guess they take one courthouse for granted, but that courthouse, and so like I said, I went and I stood out in front of where Ziegler's was, I don't know what it's called now, and I looked over there. When you look over there, this is what you see. And when you're planning on erasing that, it has to be, I believe, we have to be very careful, and it has to be very thoughtful. And I understand what you're saying, but it just seems odd to me, because it is our money too, that in the planning, I would want to be paying for these things to be drawn up and do this stuff, when in fact, what we're really doing is apparently we're looking at a footprint of just spaces, but we don't even have our own, you know, we have a different size footprint here than what we know full well we want to have. And I think it's a bit of a misconception. Sure, we benefit if we have a shared space. I'm all for it. I think we should have done it years ago. You know, I was hoping we would have done it years ago. But there's no doubt the county benefits as well from a shared space, because it's a shared space, so it's something that we're just jointly, we're paying for. But I don't want this looked at like this is some.
Well, the
this is
community
just me.
benefits too, because you have one court now to go to. You don't have to have people go to.
Yeah, sure, all those things are good, but for most people, the reality is, most people aren't gonna go to court. You know, most people that, you know, the people just kind of come to town and they leave, the people that live here and they go up in the square. This is what we look at. And that can't be, you know, just arbitrarily kind of, you know, stuck together, because this is what the footprint is. And like I said, the footprint does include tearing down the back of the old courthouse, which is part of the original courthouse, and taking down the prosecutor's office, and bringing a footprint right up to the sidewalk. So it seems like you'd want to make these decisions fairly early on, before you spend any more, before you spend more money on a plan that you're gonna redo.
What you're saying about this, I would assume what you're referring is that the CDC and the Historic Preservation Board will be involved in, before the footprint.
And the archive
And
commission.
and tearing down buildings is decided.
Right, I mean.
And I don't know if that's been decided. I mean, has that been, are you saying that the old courthouse is absolutely coming down? I mean, the middle courthouse is absolutely coming down? Is that?
I don't think anybody has made that
See, yeah,
decision.
I don't
I mean,
think that-
this is all very preliminary
Right.
in our
But this is
overall
what,
planning.
this is what people, this is when.
Well, they
this
see
is
that.
Publicized, this looks a lot like it's
Yeah.
coming down.
That does, right. And I don't know.
Yes, I think I
have a
just
lot
think
of-
it needs to be engaged sooner than later.
And maybe-
So that you don't end up with, I don't know why you want to spend all that money, and then we're like, oh, we're not doing that. I
Well,
wouldn't do that.
what I'm hearing now is, we're not doing this. This is kind of just, that's kind of what I hear, but,
Okay.
I mean, maybe this is where the idea comes, and then from here, you get those decisions of what it's really gonna look like, because I think what I'm hearing is, we don't agree it's gonna look like anything like this. I don't think it's gonna look anything like this, I wouldn't agree to it, I wouldn't vote on it, but, I don't know.
But then at the same time, I hear Commissioner saying, this isn't what it's gonna look
Right,
like.
right, that's
So
right,
I
right.
think we're still going back to that, it's $8 million that we had to work with. We were hoping that, yes, construction costs have gone up, but there's gonna be some savings on the
Right, we thought,
shared
we thought maybe that
space.
they would be able to get some savings on that, and the space would be larger for our municipal judge, based upon that savings. And maybe we gotta go figure out what that is, because right now, the 11.25 that we saw, that's not a non-starter, I guess, for us.
So for the benefit of those watching the video and the press that are here, I just want to correct a statement that what's there is working. It is not working. It is unsafe for the people that are in the county courthouse right now, every day. It does not follow any of the Supreme Court guidelines, and what we're doing next door is equally unsafe and ill-designed. So the outside of the building is one thing. The inner workings and separating in custody persons from staff, from general public who are just there to pick up an application or pay their fee or whatever, are requirements now. And some of these changes and some of these space constraints are all a result of that. Through no fault of our own, the building has to be substantially different than what we have next door and what we have existing on the square, just because of those requirements now. The elevators have to be separated for in custody versus.
And I think I mean, at least I understand what you're saying, and I think we all agree that when we went with Judge Chase's program, we totally understood that was what we needed to do to have safety between the interactions of the persons that are visiting the court and paying bills and the persons that are going to court because of an offense they committed. I think that I agree. And the internal workings accomplishes that, and but I think what we're talking about, they won't really have to be exactly designed like this, as long as you still meet those requirements.
Exactly. It's got to be a blend of the two. Now, the other thing is, this company so far has only been hired to see physically what space would be there, whether it's to the sidewalk or it's not to the sidewalk, whether it looks this way or that way. That can all be tweaked yet. But the county, and Bill can correct me if I'm wrong, and I'd like to have the judge speak as well if he wants to. The county is looking to move to accept RFPs from a variety of companies, and then to award a contract to start going to the next phases. But it's difficult for me to tell the county we're in if we're this far apart with things. You know, we're at 11 million versus 8 million.
Right.
So I guess I'm just asking the council, do you want us to continue down this path?
Yeah, absolutely, but you know we're always at 8 million, I mean, we were never at 11, and we've always been there for years.
Understood.
So,
Understood.
as long as you guys know that, let's design something where we're in at 8 million. I think that's where we're at. Was that, am I misstating it? And Judge, yes.
Yeah, I'm gonna chime in here. I'm gonna walk up to the front a little bit. Okay, so this is why you start off with a small group at the planning table. It's a it's the cooks phenomenon, right? You know, the too many cooks. This is the starting line. It took $50,000 and a group of a dozen or so people from the community to get together once a month for X months and go through iterations of this, you know, what you're looking in front of you, to get this far. So this is sort of, we worked this hard and spent this money so we could get to the starting line. And I can tell you in the discussions about the elevations, we just needed something that you could show. And you gotta be able to communicate something about the project. And Bill says correctly, these aren't final choices, but we had to choose something so that we could talk about a project. As far as the shape of this building and the functionality, I think of it in terms of like silos. There's a muni court silo and there's a common pleas silo. And as the mayor says, it is head and shoulders superior to what exists presently. We had, both courts now I know have had safety assessments performed this year. We had ours last year. I think common pleas had theirs finished this year. And they send somebody up from the Ohio Supreme Court and they look the place over, and then they belabor the obvious. They tell us, you have a very unsafe building. There's no separation between personnel, court personnel, and the public in our building. There's a single narrow corridor through which prisoner transports, every person, every citizen who gets cited for something, all of the folks who work in the courthouse, all the law enforcement, we're all marching up and down the same small hallway. The area right outside of the chambers is like a convocation area. So I don't want to go through all that because a lot of you have seen all that already. I can tell you personally, the function of this is way more important to me than the appearance. And I don't mean that the appearance doesn't matter. What I mean to say is I am willing to defer 100% on what this building looks like on the outside. And defer to the people for whom those things are truly important and very sensitive. What matters to me about this project is its functionality. And more than that, after discussions with some of the common pleas judges, I know that the problem they have with the volume of their cases, just like we have across the street, can't be addressed until we have a facility to address it with. Supreme Court has told the common pleas court as much. You sure need a third common pleas general division judge. You got nowhere to put them. I can tell you that on our muni court silo, they're only proposing to add a second non-jury courtroom. And all the plans, and I brought a cross-section going back to 1998 back here. In fact, I heard somebody say, aren't we moving a little quickly on this? And I was like, I don't think so. I mean, this project's been stewing for 20 years. And I don't know how much money and time have been spent by, public and officials and appointed officials and engineers and architects hammering through these issues. But sooner or later, somebody, and it's usually the decision makers, have to make a decision. So here we are with this starting point. The function matters to me more than anything. This does address those problems that both we have and the common pleas court have. ADA access, secure entrances, proper deployment of elevators and secure transports. We don't have a Sally Port. Common pleas, they're bringing prisoners up and down the hallway with kids going to juvenile court. I mean, that's what's going on in those buildings. Not to mention all the systems issues and the HVAC and all the other problems, all the inefficiencies. All of that gets addressed if we take our time with this. It seems to me that the winds are blowing in our direction. I mean, the county is ready to do something constructive. And I'm very encouraged by that. And I know the city council must know this, but whatever the city's share of this project is, it's a court city share of this project. This is something we're going to do together. We're both part of the same organization, if you will, so our contribution to this project is a single contribution. When you're thinking 11, subtract 4, because we've been, my predecessor was meticulous about saving money for exactly a project like this. So we're prepared to participate to make that thing work. But at the end of the day, this is not about us. This building is not about me, it's not about Bill, it's not about anybody in this room, it's about this county 50 years from now, with the problems they're going to have, the problems that we don't even know exist yet. And when they're talking about addressing those problems and managing those caseloads and dealing with the populations in that time, it's our responsibility not just to preserve what we have, but to prepare for them so that when they have to make tough choices, we have prepared them to make them. So I'm trying to take a holistic view of this. And like I said, you want to design the outside, I'm completely okay with that. But it's got to work like this.
Except you just said I don't care what the outside looks like, I want it to be functional, which is like an all or nothing. And it seems to me that it'd be an odd place to go to start from, because it's a big, big piece of property. And we are willingly engaged in this, as we have been for a very long time. But I think you could have everything work for you and have it visually and architecturally be designed, not what you said, which was, I don't care what the outside looks like, I want it to be functional. That's not a good starting place.
No, it is, because I'm coming up here and telling you, I'm ready to defer on the look of this place to the folks for whom that is the most important facet of this project. I'm willing to defer. I'm not gonna get in the way of those decisions. If you can make the functionality of this work with an elevation that pleases you, count me in.
But I think we're all talking the same
Yeah.
things. We've been doing this, like you said, for 20 years. We're so serious about this. In 2008, we wanted to do a joint project, but we went to the commissioners at that time. They said no.
Right.
So we started down a process of going on our own, and we spent 2 or 3 years hiring the architect, going through the drawings. We just had tension of what it actually, we were willing to spend on it, because we
Yep.
were so close. I mean, I thought it was done. And then we couldn't come off of like 1,000 square feet, 1,500 square feet, and died. But we're still there, we're still willing to do the 8 million, and I would correct you, the 4 million from 11, that's part of the 7, part of the 8, so we're only looking at $4 million. Your 4 million that you have is part of the 7 and 8, it's not in addition to. So we're willing to do it, we were almost there, we are all engaged, coming in with $7.5 to $8 million as we talked about, let's get it to work. And the functionality, we're there with you. We went through the whole thing with the architect about the functionality, and we want that. So I think we're talking the same things, but I think the numbers are a little different. So we need to design something that fit us, the numbers that we're comfortable with. That's what we're-
Just last point, the only thing that's gonna change if we do nothing is the price.
I agree with you.
Yep.
That's why 10 years ago,
Okay, well-
we would have saved millions of dollars because the construction costs were so low and it didn't happen. I agree with you. 100%. I think we're on the same page.
Okay.
One question.
Yes.
If you look at these drawings, the way this is kind of laid out, we have a very separate muni court versus the common police court. Would you all be okay if we merged them more together? Instead
As
of
long as you
having-
keep the safety and the functionality, absolutely, whatever, I mean, we want it to work. And I don't know if it really have to be separate, because I don't know if people really think that way when you come in. They think, well, I'm going over to this court, because I think some people today go to the wrong court because they have no idea.
I fully agree with that.
So-
But I think that, you know, I mean, there's gotta be some separation, because you have to know that you're walking into a municipal courtroom and not a common police
Oh,
court.
yeah.
So there has to be some delineation at some stage or some level. But if, you know, again, the way this concept was put together, we have a very separate silo for the common police court.
And the clerks.
Relative to the municipal court. And if we
Yeah.
merge them all together, we could probably eliminate a lot of hallways and
Yeah.
other things that were designed to separate the two spaces and just kind of combine them.
We would totally agree with you, because again, you and I are all taxpayers.
All right.
What can we
And as
do?
long as you're all, yeah,
But I think I want to be clear, and I don't want to speak for everybody on council, because everybody can speak, but I think from the years that we've been doing this, that's kind of where we're coming from as far as a price is concerned. And we actually thought by combining it would even be lower, that maybe we can give extra space, go to 29,000 square feet, because by combining it would actually save money. That's kind of what we.
well, I would tell you that in just the last 2 years, the cost of construction has gone up dramatically.
Right, well, hopefully we're coming back around.
$8
because it
million
can't keep going up.
2 years ago would get you a whole lot more than $8 million today.
Oh, I agree with you on that, 100%. All right,
Thank you so much.
anybody else have anything to say, comments? No. Okay, then we gotta go up to council.
If you need to.
I don't know, the weird time.
We might have to do it at the end of council. Is that okay?
Well, is it gonna be lengthy? 'Cause
That's fine.
Yeah, that's good then. Let's do
Okay, I
that.
guess we can do it.
For land acquisition. Make a motion to go into executive session at 7:22. For the purpose of consider the purchase of property for public purposes, sale of property, considering privilege of information with the share that I provide advance to private interest.
I don't have much more.
The mayor, the law director.
Well, I'll tell you what.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes.
Thanks, Scott Miller.
Yes.
Yes. We'll recess in the executive session and coming out of the executive session, taking no action on the items we discussed and adjourning finance thereafter. We're in recess.